Monday afternoon. This is Michael Mitchell with Madison County weather updates and crystal clear weather, bringing you the True View Exteriors severe outlook. We've got a little bit of severe potential overnight, and then maybe a little bit better severe potential tomorrow evening into very early Wednesday. Data continues to disagree with this setup, so we'll take a look at things and see where we are, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. I'm going to start off on the national level, on the national water vapor loop, and take a look at what we've got. And it's really kind of difficult to see because our main low pressure is kind of hanging out back here, depending on where the model data wants to pick it up. It's really kind of out here in the maybe southwestern North Dakota or northwestern South Dakota, kind of southeastern Montana, that kind of general area. And we can see the deeper front digging in back here that's going to come behind that low pressure. This all is going to press quickly to the east and southeast, and the low pressure system itself is going to track in a way that it'll stay mostly to our northwest and then to our north, and then it'll drag this squall line along with it. The thing that we have to watch is we've got this up here, this front digging in with northern jet stream, and you can kind of see the clouds streaking in from the southwest. That's the subtropical jet, and those are going to get just close enough that they may be able to compress the atmosphere, create a little bit of lift, and that's what we're going to be watching for. So overnight tonight we may have a hail chance, and then tomorrow evening into the overnight tomorrow night, then we may have all modes of severe possible. But the mixing of the ingredients is really going to be key on this, and it looks like they're pressing together as you look out here. It looks like this front is going to dig in and get close enough to that subtropical jet to kind of create the energy and the lift in order to create some convective thunderstorms. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at the model data and see what it has. Again, staying kind of on a national level, this is a European model. And again, you can kind of see where it has the low pressure center back here. Of course, these models kind of bounce the low pressures around. That's not really what they're doing. But as we watch this advance across, we can see, and I'll zoom in closer, but I want you to see it on the national level first. As this low pressure comes in, there's actually kind of a pseudo warm front that's kind of hanging around this 552 line. And as we get the southwest flow, you can see all these the tight isobars here. You got a lot of Gulf moisture pumping up in here, interacting where this boundary will meet. You can see there's cold air up here to the north, and so where those kind of press together in the overnight hours, we could see just these isolated cells pop up that could be capable of creating some larger hail. As that then presses through and becomes more of an issue for Ohio into the morning hours, we'll kind of go quiet much of tomorrow. The European does show a little bit of activity around, just pop-up activity during the day. Now we're getting to 7 p.m. and we can see convection beginning to build yet again. Everywhere from back here, you can see how tight these black lines are. That's a very tight pressure gradient. That creates a lot of wind. I've been telling you, I think wind is going to be the primary threat. But that creates a lot of wind, and if that front's moving fast enough, it also creates the lift that can help also create some spin, but also help create larger hail. So this is by 7 p.m. tomorrow night, according to the European, to get that tag out of the way. And then you can see the convective activity really perks up. This is by 10 p.m. And then by 1 a.m., then most of the activity is beginning to press off to our south with some spotty activity remaining in, around, especially up closer to the low pressure. I would kind of think that the spin needed to create tornadoes is probably going to be up closer to that low pressure. So I'd continue to watch northwestern Indiana, northern Indiana maybe for tornado possibility. And then farther down at the tail end of the line as well, you can often get some spin right at the tail of those. So again, I think if you're in the northern half of Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana along the Ohio River, maybe northern Kentucky, those areas could be a little bit under the gun for tornadoes as well. I'll show you the SBC call here in just a minute. but I just wanted to show you kind of a progress on a national level. Then that kind of scoots out according to the European. Then the low pressure presses pretty far up to the north, so snow getting in on the backside doesn't seem very likely according to the European. Some of the higher resolution data completely disagrees with all of this, and we'll show you that. And then, though there's no convective outlook for Kentucky and Tennessee for Wednesday, this is by about 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. You can see there's still a skinny line of storms pressing out of central Kentucky and central. If we back up, this is around 1 p.m. on Wednesday. You can see this thin line, and I think as that presses and gets toward the mountains, you've got these strong winds pressing in there. I do think you're going to have to watch for some damaging winds with these cells, and it may not be widespread. I think high winds will be widespread, but I still think eastern half of Kentucky and Tennessee Wednesday afternoon, you're going to have to watch out for some potential for damaging winds, even though right now, again, there's no call from the SPC for that. And then that scoots on out of the way, leaving the cold air in place for Thursday. So let's take a look at what the SPC has for us. So I'm going to look at it from a national level again first, just so that you can see. They have a marginal risk of severe going down into the northern parts of Arkansas, into kind of the southeastern, maybe third to half of Missouri. A slight risk of severe across most of Illinois, most of Indiana, and southern Michigan, and then marginal risk off into Kentucky and Ohio. Again, I do think that down here in this southern tip right here, we may need to watch for some isolated tornadoes, and then I also think that the secondary tornado threat may be up here kind of in the area of Lake Michigan, maybe getting into northern Indiana, far southern Michigan. And again, we'll see how that all plays out as things set up tomorrow. If we get much sunshine tomorrow, that can help add some fuel to things. Right now, the severe threat, in my opinion, is looking pretty widely scattered out, other than a quick line that'll press through. So we'll see how things shape up tomorrow. But this is the national look at the Storm Prediction Center. And then we'll go ahead and click over here and take a look. Here's what NOAA has for tonight. And again, they have us in a marginal risk for severe tonight. And this overnight tonight, they have no tornado threat, no wind threat. The threat overnight tonight is for large hail. 5 to 14% probability of large hail within 25 miles of a given point. So there's a decent chance there are just going to be some pop-up cells overnight that could produce some large hail. Then as we get in tomorrow, and again for us, for Illinois, it's going to be more of a daytime threat. As we get into Indiana, it's going to be more of an evening to late evening, maybe just after midnight threat. And so we're in a slight risk, and then again, you can see where the marginal risks are out around it. And again, I still would watch this area down in here, kind of east of that slight risk. I almost would think it should be pulled farther, but that's just my opinion. As we look at, then there's a tornado threat. They've got us in a 5 to 9% tornado threat for tomorrow evening. They've got us in a 15 to 29% risk for damaging winds. And then, again with the hail, they've got us in a 15 to 29% risk for hail, but this cross-hatched area means that there's at least a 10% probability of hail exceeding 2 inches in diameter. So that's some large hail. That's some hail that would do damage if it does fall. So those are our risks, again, for us getting into tomorrow, late tomorrow evening into the very early hours of Wednesday. Back to the European quickly. Lightning flash density, this is 6-hour lightning flash density. And so what we want to take a look at, again, is we're getting into the cells that are going to be overnight tonight. You can see that there is a decent amount of lightning that will be with these cells. You can't take these locations verbatim because the model doesn't really know where the cells will pop, how many of them will pop up. But where they do pop up, in addition to hail, there could be some pretty potent lightning going on with these cells, so they could be quite noisy where they do happen. And then that gets out of here, and then as we get into tomorrow evening, then again, by into storms late tomorrow night into the very early hours of Wednesday, we could see again some storms with a quite a bit of lightning with them on top of the severe threats. And then, of course, that moves on out of the area. Okay, so model differences on precipitation coverage. So we'll stick with the European first since that's where we are. It's probably the global model. I agree with most. The GFS is kind of coming toward the European a little bit. But so here we are at about 10 o'clock tonight. And then as we get into the overnight hours, it's about 1 a.m. and about 4 a.m. You can just see these, it's just got patchy cells all over. Again, you can't tell, you can't take this verbatim. It doesn't mean that it knows that these are the locations that it'll get it. The only thing you should take out of this is just the patchy nature of it, that where it does pop up, it could be, again, with some large hail and some frequent lightning, so they could be some loud storms on a couple of levels. And then that moves on out of the way by about 7 a.m. Then as we get into the day, it's got these little patchy cells around during the day. I would beware of, if we get any cells, again, don't take location verbatim, but if we get isolated cells to pop up during the heat of the day tomorrow afternoon, those would be the ones that, where I think central and southern Indiana might be at more risk for supercell type storms that could produce tornadoes. Those should be very isolated, but you can't rule them out. The European certainly has them there, and then the coverage then picks up this by 7 p.m. Get that tag out of the way. 10 p.m. And then as we press into about 1 a.m., then it gets the majority of the activity pressed off to the south, but just some scattered activity in behind, and really not much in the way of snow on the backside. So that's what the European has. Now let's take a look at some high resolution data. This video is getting a little long, but I want to make sure I cover everything. So here's a look at the HRRR model. So this is at 10 p.m., 11, midnight, 1, 2, and you can see it's got a lot less in the way of coverage, but it does still just have these patchy cells around. I think the coverage is going to be greater than this, but it's again still just going to, it's going to be isolated, but where it does happen, it could definitely be attention getting. And then those cells then press on off into Ohio by the time we're getting to the 4 to 5 a.m. time frame. And then Ohio would then be looking for a little more of a widespread hail producing scenarios that get into the daybreak hours. That then moves on. This is the 12Z HRRR model. And then here you can see it's got the low pressure pressing off. This is by 5 p.m. It's got absolutely nothing going on. 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And you can see it's much more ragged with what could pop up. But again, where these cells do pop up, when they're in a patchy nature like this, to me, you tend to be a little more concerned than if they just form a solid squall line that presses through. So we'll keep an eye on that. And again, it kind of consolidates it a little bit as we're hitting about 10 p.m., 11 p.m., then it's creating more of a line. And then it's pressing out by about midnight. 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. And then we can see the snow kind of hanging off to the northwest. It's a little bit more in line with the European on that. So some of the model data, let me take a look. I actually haven't looked at the NAM3K yet, so we'll take a look at that together and see what it has. I know last time I looked at it, it differed quite a bit on the severe threat, but it had a lot more of a wintry weather threat. So we'll take a look at it real quick, see what the 12Z has. All right, so here's the NAM3K, 12Z NAM3K. So let's take a look at it real quick. So this is about 10 p.m. tonight, and you can see it's just much more disorganized with this stuff, and it pushes it off. It doesn't really show much in the way of convective potential with it. So, without a lot of lift, you're not going to get any kind of hail. The NAM3K really doesn't even want to give much in the way of any kind of precipitation or any kind of activity tonight. So it's just very patchy, very light. Then as we get into the day tomorrow, you can see it brings the low pressure off across Illinois again, much like the other models do. But you can see this is by 8 p.m. Just a lot less activity with it. It's all confined much more, much closer to the center of low pressure, but even that is kind of lagging it. You would think that there would be more kind of here in the southeastern quadrant around the low pressure, and then back where the front would be. And this kind of lagging a little bit. I really don't agree with this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. And then as it advances across, again, this is by 10 p.m., 11 p.m. It's just got, a narrow line of a bunch of nothing, a secondary line of not much, and then it really just kind of presses and just stays very disorganized all through the night. Just 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then by 7 a.m. the front's beginning to press in, and look at all this wintry, it's got probably sleet. It wouldn't be freezing rain, but probably some, sleet, and then maybe some snow mixing in there. This is by 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Wednesday, 9 a.m. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Wednesday. You can see it keeps wintry precipitation around right as it presses through, and then it gets on out of here. So the NAM 3K has yet a totally different outlook than the HRRR has kind of migrated toward. So far, the European has been relatively consistent on this thing. HRRR has migrated toward it a little bit. The NAM has kind of been on its own island, but sometimes it hits on those. So we'll see how things look tomorrow. So again, my gut on this whole thing is that as we go back and look at our threat tomorrow, again, I do think that we're going to have isolated cells tonight with some hail potential, some frequent lightning potential. They'll be not very isolated, but they'll be isolated. And then as we get into tomorrow, again, I think for Madison County, for East Central Indiana, Anderson, Muncie, Noblesville, Marion, Kokomo, those areas, Newcastle. Our threat time is probably going to be late tomorrow evening, maybe in the 10 p.m. to midnight time frame, and all modes of severe would be on the table. But again, I think, to me, damaging winds are the number one threat, large hail is the number two threat, and tornadoes are the number three threat. The SPC kind of puts the hail threat above the wind threat, but again, you saw how tight the pressure is. Winds are going to be a problem. So we'll take a look at things tomorrow. We'll see how the winds really stack up, how the ingredients come together. Do we get the moisture flow into it that we need, or does it end up, the subtropical jet and the polar jet stay separated just enough that we don't really get the mixing? So that'll all be in the focus a little better, because again, when I showed you on the satellite, it was pretty disorganized and pretty hard to see out there to our northwest. It'll be well out into the plains by tomorrow, and we'll be able to tell better. So I've gone on long enough. That's the way things look right now. This has been the True View Exteriors severe weather outlook. Again, if you have, whether it's storm damage or any other exterior remodeling needs that you need taken care of, get a hold of Alex at True View Exteriors and let him take care of you. He'll do a great job for you. So this is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. As always, thank you to those of you who support this page. Thank you to the sponsors. If you haven't supported this page financially, and you can, please do so. So everybody have a great day. Enjoy this. We're probably going to get up around 70 degrees today. Enjoy that, and we'll see how things play out for tomorrow. So have a great day.